Hey, it's Benji Cole, son of Al Cole from CBS Radio and host of People of Distinction, the talk that gives an in-depth view of some of the most dynamic, intelligent, and successful people on the planet. Run to our website, peopleofdistinction.org for more info, or you can always email me directly at benji@alcoleenterprises.com. And on the line with us today, we have Robin T. Brown. We'll be discussing his wonderful memoir, The Life of a Running Man, A Life of Running from God. Available for purchase through Amazon as well as barnesandnoble.com, or really wherever books are sold. So make sure you're picking up your copy today. And guys, I will say that Robin was brought to our network, People of Distinction, by some of the best publishers in the business. Diamond Media Press Publishing. So if you have a book that you'd like moved, well, make sure you're giving yourself the best gift you could possibly give, and you contact Diamond Media. You can find out more information on them at diamondmediapressco.com. So without further ado, let's jump right in. Robin, first and foremost, welcome to People of Distinction, and thank you so much for being a guest with us today. How are you, man?
Thank you very much for having me, and I'm doing fantastic.
Wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful. Well, Robin, listen, the pleasure is all ours, okay? We're truly looking forward to this. Not only, for the words of wisdom we're going to be able to pull from you today, but also once we pick up the book, listen, this is going to be the gift that keeps on giving, man, and we're looking forward to embarking upon every one of the journeys that you talk about in the book with you. Now, I know we have so much information to cover, Robin, so without further ado, man, let's get it going. The Life of a Running Man. Tell us a little bit more about your book.
This book, it was written because I come from a large family. I mean, I had 9 brothers and sisters, and my mom and dad, and we have literally moved back and forth across the country from Georgia to California probably a dozen times before I was 16 years old. And
wow.
I don't know why, but that was just my dad. I've had people ask me to explain why we did that and why. I don't know. I was a kid. He said we were moving, so we moved. And it was, I never went to the same school 2 years in a row. So, school kind of didn't interest me that much. I actually didn't even graduate. I quit when I was a junior in high school, and English was probably one of my worst subjects. So me writing a book was as big of a surprise to me as it was to anybody. Mm-hmm. And at the age of 18, I met my wife, and we actually met in a parking lot where a bunch of teenagers just kind of cruised on the weekend. And she was with a friend of hers, and I was standing on the sidewalk, and she told her friend, she says, "I'm going to marry that guy." Never spoke to her, never laid eyes on her before. And 6 months later, we got married, and October will be 42 years that we've been together. So, and through that, we our first son was born at the age of, I was 20, and we moved to Hawaii, supposed to be for a honeymoon, but we ended up staying there for 3 years because my wife's mother was there. And we just started our life, like that, and trying to do life on our own. And I was raised in the church. I came from a good, strong Christian family, but as many teenagers and young people do, they think they can do life on their own. Mm-hmm. And, just go their own way. And then about the age of, there was a lot of stuff happened. When I was 24, I had a car fall on me and almost died, collapsed my lung, and that was the first time I ever said or prayed to God and asked him to get me through this, and I'll start doing right.
My
Well, I
goodness.
survived that after a few days in the hospital, and when I got out, I was off to the races again. Doing things my way. And I guess it was about the age of 27. I was driving a truck, and we were introduced to speed and methamphetamine. But we had smoked weed our whole life. I mean, not our whole life, but from about the age 16. So,
Mm-hmm.
weed was just a natural part of my life. And then we started doing meth and, methamphetamine, to be clear on that. And we did that through, well, I'll say 38 years we were in that addiction. And during that time, in '95, we moved back and forth. I don't know why, but I kind of followed my dad's footsteps to an extent. I'm a construction worker. I run heavy equipment, so I kind of followed the work. And my wife tells me, she says, "You got your mark all across this country," because I built stuff everywhere. And in 1995, we were homeless, and we were up in Utah at my sister-in-law's, and we went camping, and I got bit by a rattlesnake, and that was probably the most painful thing I've ever had in my life. And I was in the hospital for 4 days, and when I got to the emergency room, they gave me, we were in a little town in Utah, and they gave me a shot of Demerol, and after the shot of Demerol, I didn't know if the snake bit me or I bit the snake. I mean, that stuff put me in la-la land. So we ended up going up to Salt Lake, and I was in the hospital in Salt Lake for 4 days, and the nurse told me, well, again, while I was laying in the hospital after the snake bit me, it was like another one of those aha moments. God help me get through this, and I'll certainly start following you. And then I spent 4 days in the hospital, and when I woke up, the nurse told me if I had been 15 minutes later, I'd have been dead. So that was my second near-death experience. And God kept me alive through that. And we ended up going back to California, where my oldest brother, who was a pastor, all of our stuff was at his house. And we'd been to Mesquite, Nevada, where I worked, California, Georgia, Alabama, and many places in between. So we went to California. We got our stuff out of my brother's yard, had a yard sale, and we packed up my 1958 Chevy Apache pickup, which was just a little vision of what it looked like. It was primer gray with white spoke wheels, and I had a mustard colored yellow Ford Courier trailer that we had everything we owned on it, and we looked like the Beverly Hillbillies in 1995, headed back to Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
And we got there, and we were there about 6 months. I went back to work for a previous boss, and a friend of mine called me from an airplane. This is when you could first start making calls from airplanes on their phone. And he called me. He says, "Hey, Robin," he says, "I'm on my way to Alabama, and I want to know if you want to make some money." I said, "Who doesn't want to make any extra money?" So a few hours later, he calls me, and he says, "I just landed, and I'll be at your house in like 2 hours." So I said, okay. So uh, my youngest son, okay, my oldest son was born in 1980. My youngest son was born in 96 in Alabama. So my friend shows up, and I said, okay, well, how are we going to make some money? He says, we're going to start cooking meth. And it was like, well, okay, I'd done a lot of it, but I've never manufactured it. So we started cooking meth in little hotels all across Phoenix City, Alabama. And we found my sister was selling it for us, and found out that my sister was selling it to the cops. And evidently she had some dealings with them. I don't know. But people started getting busted right and left around us. All my truck driver friends and my brother-in-law. And that's when I found out my sister was selling it to the cops. And a couple of days later, I found out that they had a house rented right across the street from my sister, and they watched everything that was going on. They knew it all. I mean, I put myself in that position, but I couldn't believe that she involved me in the situation that she was in with the police. So again, I just pray to God, please get me out of this without, I don't want to go to prison in Alabama, for one. I don't want to go to prison at all. So I got my income tax check, and well, let me go back a little bit. So besides my sister selling for us, my 16-year-old son was also selling it for me. And so, I mean, if there was anything I could ever go back and change, it would be not involving my son in my drug activity, because that just turned into a nightmare that lasted decades. But I couldn't change it. I did it, and, that was, when I came back to God, that was probably the biggest thing I asked for forgiveness for. But anyway, I packed my truck back up, and we headed back to Utah, and we ended up in Mesquite, Nevada again for the second time working. And I worked, just everywhere I could. And let's see. So I got out of going to prison in Alabama, and we worked, like I said, I worked in North Dakota, California, Hawaii, I mean, like I said, all over. And when we ended up moving from Mesquite, Nevada to Las Vegas, and that's where I've been for the last 24 years. And I've built so much stuff here. But in I take that back. In 2012, when the economy crashed, well, it actually crashed in 2009, but I was out of work for 2.5 years. And a friend of mine and we started stealing copper wire to survive. It wasn't because of a drug addiction. I was just trying to feed my family. My unemployment ran out. I had drug payment, and so we started getting copper wire, from construction sites. And before that, I'd never been to jail, never had a police record, but we got caught taking copper wire, and they literally made an example out of me. And I went to jail, and like I said, I was 54 years old at this time. And I went to jail. I got out the next day, and my court proceedings lasted about 2 years before I actually got a probation officer. They gave me a 5 years probation, and even during that time, I couldn't stay clean. I was still smoking weed and doing meth, and whatever I had to do to survive. And I went to see my probation officer. It was a new probation officer, and I went in and had a dirty urine test, and he told me to turn around and put the handcuffs on me, and they took me straight to jail, and that's where I sat in county jail for 6 weeks. And this happened 2 days before Thanksgiving in 2013. So I spent the next 6 weeks in jail. First time I had ever spent a holiday away from my family, and that just crushed me. And we were staying with a friend of mine before I went to jail, and when I went to jail, he kicked my wife and my youngest son out. So as far as I knew, they were on the street, and I didn't know what to do, because I felt guilty because I was in jail. I had 3 meals a day and a bed to sleep on, and I didn't know if my wife and son, I didn't know where they were at.
Right.
And that really crushed me. So a week before Christmas, we were sitting there in our pod in the county jail, in Clark County Jail. And me and 3 other guys were watching the story of the Bible on TV. And I was sitting there, and as this movie's playing, my whole life starts flashing before my eyes. And I broke down, went back to my bunk, and got on my knees, and I begged God for forgiveness. Every time I talk about this, it brings tears to my eyes.
Yeah, of course.
But I went back to my bunk and just begged God to forgive me. And the Holy Spirit came over me like nothing ever before. I mean, when I got up, I actually felt like I was born again. I felt like a new man. God lifted the weight off of my shoulders. Like I can't even describe it. But like I said, I felt like a new person. And so I spent 6 weeks in county jail, and then I went to court on January 6th, and the judge and my lawyer and the district attorney told me that I was unsupervisable, and they were revoking my probation and sentenced me to a 2 to 5 years jail sentence. And it crushed me. I mean, I really thought I was going to go home. During this whole time, I got to see my wife on a video that they had in the county jail, so that was the only time I got to see her. And I saw her that morning and told her we were already making plans on me getting out, because I was just sure that they were going to reinstate my probation, and I was going to get to go home. And they reprimanded me to custody and sent me to High Desert State Prison, which just, I can't even describe the feeling of that. But I knew in my heart that if I had to go to jail, that I wanted God in my life to do it with.
Wow. Yeah, listen, Robin, the only thing that I can say is wow, man. Guys, you know what is absolutely incredible is he said all of that, and yet we've barely scratched the surface. I mean, we still have so much left. There's still so much left. You know what you have to do. Amazon, Barnes & Noble are where you have to go. I mean, listen, pretty much wherever books are sold, you're going to want to pick up The Life of a Running Man. You're never going to want to put it down, I promise you. The only other question that I could ask, Robin, what are you hoping to see people do or take from this book?
Well, like I said earlier, I would say anyone who is going down a path of addiction or just feeling lost and out of control, and you hear that voice in the back of your head saying, "Stop, I'll help you," it's the voice of God telling you, "I'm here for you. All you have to do is ask." And the mercy and grace of God is like nothing you could describe. It's just, I look back and I wish I had done this, turned my life over to him decades ago. Right. It would have saved me so much heartache. But if he had of, I wouldn't have the story that I have. And I was inspired. I wrote the book as I was in jail. I just started writing, and people would say, "What are you doing? What are you writing?" I said, "I'm just writing my life down." And then they would say, "Well, man, a couple of educated guys in there say, man, you need to publish this." So I just continued through the year that I was in prison. I just continued writing. And then when I got out, I asked my pastor at my church, because he's an author and published like 9 or 10 books. And I gave it to him and I said, "Pastor Judd, would you look at this and just tell me if I should follow through with publishing it?" And he read it, and he actually had his secretary type it all out for me because this was all handwritten. And he says, "You need to publish this." So that's where I am.
I'm going to say it for you one more time, even though I know I don't have to. I know the majority of you are already there. Well, I'm going to say it once more just to re-impress it. Here on the line with Robin T. Brown. We just finished discussing his wonderful memoir, The Life of a Running Man, a life of running from God, available for purchase through Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or wherever books are sold. Do yourself a favor. This is a fantastic book that needs to be on everyone's shelf. A wonderful journey for you to embark upon, but an even better gift for you to get for somebody else. Let's grow, let's develop, let's educate ourselves, and it starts with this fantastic memoir. Robin, this has been an absolute pleasure, man. Such an honor. I truly mean that. Thank you once again for being a guest with us today on People of Distinction.
Thank you for having me.